They say you never forget the moment your life changes forever. For Lena Hart, it was 5 seconds that stretched into eternity. Marcus Veldon's hand gripped her torn jacket sleeve, his voice sharp with authority cutting through the darkening forest. You shouldn't have seen this, Lena. His 2 associates flanked her, blocking any escape route through the dense Montana pines. The clearing was isolated, miles from the nearest trail marker. No hikers, no rangers, no help. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs as blood from the gunshot graze soaked warm through her field jacket. This was it. This was how her story ended, not in a research lab or teaching classroom, but in anonymous wilderness where her body might never be found. Then the world went silent. The evening breeze died among the pine needles. Marcus's heavy breathing seemed to pause. Even the distant creek stopped its murmur. 1 second. A low growl rolled from the tree line like distant thunder, primal, warning, unmistakable. 2 seconds. Marcus's eyes widened, his grip on her arm loosening just slightly. His associates turned toward the sound, hands moving toward their rifles. 3 seconds. Lena recognized that sound. Her breath caught. Impossible. It couldn't be. 4 seconds. Gray fur emerged from shadow, massive, scarred, moving with deadly purpose. Battle-torn ear. Slight limp in the right front leg. Amber eyes that had haunted her memories for 3 years. 5 seconds. 90 pounds of wild fury stepped into the fading twilight. Ash had come. But behind him, 6 more. The entire Ashwood pack materialized from the forest like smoke given form, spreading into a defensive arc 7 wolves between Lena and the men who wanted her dead. But to understand why a wild alpha would risk everything, his pack, his territory, his life, to save one terrified girl, we need to go back 3 years to the night 16-year-old Lena Hart made a choice that would save both their lives. Lakewood, Colorado wasn't the kind of place you dreamed about. It was the kind of place you endured until you could finally escape. Population 155,984, sprawled in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, where strip malls outnumbered dreams and most kids peaked in high school before settling into decades of quiet disappointment. Lena Hart arrived at her aunt's house on a Tuesday in late September with everything she owned crammed into 2 black garbage bags and a backpack with a broken zipper. She was 14 years old. The social worker's sedan pulled away, taillights disappearing around the corner, taking with it the last connection to her previous life. Her bank account, the one her parents had started when she was born, showed $247.33. She checked it 3 times that evening on her aunt's ancient desktop computer, as if the number might magically change into something that could fix what was broken. The converted garage she'd sleep in sat behind Aunt Rebecca's main house, separated by a chain-link fence and 20 feet of cracked concrete. Uninsulated walls, a space heater that barely worked, a twin mattress on a metal frame, and a plastic dresser from Walmart. $400 a month from survivor benefits. Rebecca collected it but made clear the garage was all Lena would get. I didn't ask for this, her aunt said that first night, cigarette smoke curling from her thin lips. But family's family, I guess. At 16, Lena looked older. The kind of older that comes from grief, not years. Her brown hair hung in a perpetually messy braid, dark circles shadowed green eyes that had watched her parents die in twisted metal and shattered glass on I-70. Her hands were calloused from the after-school job at Riverside Veterinary Clinic, minimum wage, mucking kennels, holding frightened animals while Dr. Patel administered vaccines. Her jeans were worn thin at the knees, her jacket a thrift store find with someone else's name still written in faded Sharpie on the inner tag, Michelle. She worked 20 hours a week if Dr. Patel had the hours. Walked 40 minutes each way because bus fare added up. Ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. Studied in the public library until closing because it was warmer than the garage. No friends, she'd changed schools after the accident, and grief made her strange to teenagers worried about homecoming and college applications. No future, college required money she'd never have, and Rebecca made it clear Lena was on her own at 18. But every Saturday, something broke through the numbness. Colorado Wildlife Rescue, a non-profit operating out of a converted barn 30 miles north, needed weekend volunteers. Lena took 2 buses to get there. The work was hard, cleaning enclosures, preparing food, assisting with injured animal intake. But for 8 hours she could forget about the garage, the debt collectors calling about her parents' medical bills, the emptiness that lived in her chest like a stone. Dr. Sarah Chen, the rescue's director, saw something in the quiet girl who showed up every week without fail. "You're good with them," she told Lena one afternoon, watching her calm a terrified raccoon kit. "The scared ones. You understand them." Summer after Lena's junior year, Aunt Rebecca made an announcement over microwave TV dinners. She was moving to Arizona with her boyfriend, leaving in 3 weeks. Lena wasn't coming. "You can go into foster care or figure something else out. You're almost 18 anyway." Lena had $212 in her account, half a year of high school remaining, and nowhere to go. Dr. Chen mentioned it casually during Lena's final Saturday shift. "We partner with a field research station in Montana. They take on summer assistants, room, board, small stipend. It's hard work, but..." She studied Lena's face. "I think you'd be good at it." The Bitterroot Wildlife Research Station needed someone willing to work for minimum wage, sleep in a bunk bed, and spend 12-hour days tracking wolves through wilderness. They preferred college students but would consider motivated high school graduates. Lena forged her aunt's signature on the emancipated minor paperwork, lied about her age on the application, and spent her last $200 on a Greyhound ticket. She left Colorado at dawn on a Tuesday in June, watching the mountains recede through a dirty bus window, carrying everything important in a backpack: her parents' wedding photo, a field guide to North American mammals, and a desperate hope that maybe, somewhere else, she could become someone new. The research station sat 40 miles from Missoula, accessible only by logging road, surrounded by national forest that stretched to the horizon. 5 buildings: main lab, equipment shed, 2 bunkhouses, Dr. Marcus Veldon's private cabin. Small team: Dr. Veldon, senior researcher, 42, charismatic in the way of men who know they are respected. Dr. Chen visiting periodically, 2 graduate students, and now Lena. Her job: track wolf movements via GPS collar data, collect scat samples for analysis, maintain trail cameras, enter data into research databases. She loved it with an intensity that surprised her. Finally, she had purpose. Finally, she belonged somewhere. Marcus took special interest in her work ethic, her quiet competence, her willingness to take on the assignments others avoided. He taught her advanced tracking techniques, explained population dynamics, talked about conservation like it was sacred work. He felt like the father she'd lost, and for the first time since the accident, Lena felt something like hope. But late that summer, hiking back from a trail camera check, Lena took a wrong turn in fading light. The forest all looked the same: pine, shadow, mountain silence. She checked her GPS unit, realized she'd wandered into unmapped territory northeast of their usual range. Then she heard it, high, pained whimpering that didn't sound like any animal she'd studied. She followed the sound off trail, pushing through underbrush as twilight deepened to dusk, until she stumbled into a small clearing. What she found there would bind her fate to a wolf who'd one day save her life. But first, she had to save his. The clearing was small, maybe 20 feet across, ringed by ancient pines whose roots twisted through rocky soil like arthritic fingers. Twilight had deepened to that uncertain hour when shapes lose definition and shadows gain weight. The whimpering came from the center, near a lightning-split stump. Lena approached slowly, her boots silent on the carpet of pine needles. Her headlamp beam found him, a young wolf, maybe 8 months old, caught in a wire snare that had drawn tight around his right front leg. The metal had cut deep. Blood soaked the ground beneath him, dark and wet, pooling in the depressions between roots. He tried to lunge when her light hit him, the movement jerking the snare tighter. His yelp of pain cut straight through her chest. The leg was mangled, wire embedded in tissue, and from the amount of blood, he'd been here for hours. Maybe longer. "Hey," Lena whispered, freezing in place. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's lips pulled back, revealing teeth designed to crack elk bones. His ears lay flat against his skull. Yellow-amber eyes tracked her every breath, wild with pain and terror. He was going to bite her if she got close. She knew it. He knew it. Pure survival instinct. But something else caught her attention, the snare itself. Professional-grade cable, locked with a mechanism she'd seen in trapping supply catalogs. Not something a casual poacher would use. This was expensive equipment, carefully placed on what was clearly a game trail. Illegal on federal land, and they were definitely on federal land. The wolf whimpered again, the sound breaking into a whine that spoke of exhaustion and approaching shock. Lena made her decision in the space between heartbeats. She couldn't call for help, her radio only reached 5 miles, and the station was at least 8 miles southwest. Even if she ran, hiked back, brought Marcus or the grad students, the wolf would bleed out long before they returned. She could see it in his eyes, the glassy quality that meant he was fading. She dropped her pack, moving slowly, speaking in the gentle monotone Dr. Chen had taught her for frightened animals. "Okay, buddy. Okay. I know this is scary. I know you want to kill me right now, and honestly, that's fair. But we're going to help each other, all right? We're going to get through this together." The wolf's breathing was rapid, shallow. His hindquarters trembled. Lena pulled out her water bottle, wire cutters from her pack's toolkit, the first aid supplies she carried for human emergencies, and her flannel overshirt. The evening air was cool against her arms. She'd need that shirt later, but the wolf needed it more now. She knelt 10 feet away, still talking. "I'm Lena. I'm going to give you a name too, because I can't just call you Wolf while we do this. Your fur," she studied the gray-black coloring around his eyes, like smudged ash from an old fire. "I'm calling you Ash. Is that okay?" Ash snarled, but the sound was weaker now. "Right. You don't care. Fair enough." Lena inched closer. 5 feet. The wolf lunged, snapping, the movement driving the snare deeper. Fresh blood welled up. He yelped and collapsed, panting. "Please don't do that," Lena said, her voice cracking. "Please, Ash. I know it hurts. I know you're scared. But you have to trust me." She moved to 3 feet. Held out her flannel shirt like a matador's cape, letting him see it, smell it, understand it wasn't a threat. His eyes followed the movement, calculating, always calculating. 2 feet. Ash snapped at her, teeth clicking together 6 inches from her wrist. Lena didn't flinch. Couldn't afford to. Fear made animals more aggressive. "I know," she whispered. "I know." 1 foot. She draped the flannel over his head, gently, quickly, blocking his vision. Animals often calmed when they couldn't see. Ash thrashed once, twice, then went still, not accepting, but exhausted. Lena's hands shook as she examined the snare. The wire had cut through fur and skin, embedded in muscle. When she touched it, testing the tension, Ash whimpered beneath the flannel. The sound was almost human. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I have to do this." The wire cutters were meant for light gauge fencing, not trapping cable. She positioned them against the wire, squeezed. Nothing. Squeezed harder, putting her full body weight into it, the handles digging into her palms. The wire snapped with a sound like a guitar string breaking. Ash convulsed as the pressure released, the sudden movement driving the remaining wire deeper before it pulled free. Blood poured from the wound, arterial, bright red, pumping with his heartbeat. Lena grabbed her water bottle, doused the wound, then pressed her flannel against it with both hands. The wolf went rigid beneath her touch, every muscle locked. She could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. He could kill her right now. One movement, one decision, and her throat would be opened. "Please," Lena begged. "Please, Ash. Let me help you." His breathing slowed slightly. The tension in his body remained, coiled, ready, but he didn't bite. Lena worked quickly. She'd watched Dr. Patel treat hundreds of injuries, had assisted with enough emergencies to know the basics. Pressure to stop bleeding. Clean water to flush debris. Gauze and medical tape from her first aid kit to create a pressure bandage. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory overriding terror. 4 hours. That's how long she stayed with Ash as full darkness fell and stars emerged through the pine canopy. 4 hours of applying pressure, changing bandages when they soaked through, talking to him in a steady stream of words that meant nothing and everything. She told him about her parents, the accident, the way her mother had held her father's hand even as they died. About Aunt Rebecca and the garage and the loneliness that felt like drowning. About how she'd come to Montana hoping to become someone new, someone useful, someone who mattered. "I think maybe I was supposed to find you," she whispered as midnight approached. "I think maybe we were supposed to save each other." Ash's breathing had steadied. The bleeding had stopped. When Lena finally, carefully, removed the flannel from his head, Those amber eyes met hers with something that wasn't quite trust but wasn't pure fear anymore either. Acknowledgement. Recognition. She backed away slowly, giving him space. Ash struggled to his feet, favoring the injured leg but able to bear weight. He stood there, swaying slightly, watching her. Go, Lena said. Go back to your pack. Heal. Live. For a long moment, he didn't move. Just stared at her with those ancient eyes, as if memorizing her face, her scent, the sound of her voice. Then he limped toward the tree line, moving carefully through underbrush. At the edge of shadow, he turned back once, one final look, before disappearing into darkness. Lena sat in the empty clearing, covered in blood, shaking with adrenaline crash and cold. Her flannel was ruined. Her first aid kit was empty. She'd just committed a federal violation by treating wildlife without authorization. And she'd never felt more certain of anything in her life. The hike back took 3 hours. She used her phone's dying battery for light, followed her GPS coordinates, stumbled into the research station at 3:47 a.m. Marcus was waiting in the main lab, coffee mug in hand, face carved with concern. Jesus, Lena. Where the hell have you been? She looked down at herself, blood-soaked shirt, torn pants, date under her fingernails. I fell. Cut myself on rocks near the eastern ridge. His eyes narrowed. That's a lot of blood. Head wounds bleed a lot. Show me. Lena pushed her hair back, revealing a small scratch on her scalp she'd made with a pine branch on the hike back. It's fine now. Just scared me. Marcus studied her for a long moment. She could see him cataloging details, calculating probabilities. He didn't quite believe her, but he let it go. Get cleaned up. 6 hours until morning rounds. Lena showered until the water ran cold, watching wolf blood spiral down the drain. In her bunk, she pulled up the research station's GPS collar database on her laptop. Searched. Young male wolf, Eastern Sector, collar activated 6 months ago. Found. Signal terminated 3 weeks prior. Status. Equipment failure, natural mortality. Location of last signal. Exactly where she'd found Ash. Her stomach dropped. Someone had trapped a collared research wolf. Someone who knew which wolves wore collars and where they'd be. Someone at this station. Lena closed her laptop, lay in darkness, and understood. Saving Ash had put her on a collision course with secrets people would kill to protect. She just didn't know it yet. 2 years later, Lena Hart no longer looked like the scared girl who'd arrived on a Greyhound bus with everything she owned in a backpack. At 18, she'd earned her high school diploma through online courses completed between 12-hour field shifts. She'd learned to track wolves by their gait patterns, identify individuals by scent marking behavior, predict territory movements with 73% accuracy. Her calloused hands now carried confidence instead of desperation. She belonged here in a way she'd never belonged anywhere. And Marcus Veldon had made it all possible. He'd written recommendation letters that secured her a full scholarship to University of Montana's Wildlife Biology program, starting next fall. He taught her research methods that graduate students paid $50,000 to learn. He'd introduced her to colleagues at National Geographic, the Wildlife Conservation Society, researchers whose names appeared in textbooks. More than that, he'd become the father she'd lost. When she'd cried on the anniversary of her parents' death, Marcus had driven her to Missoula, bought her dinner, listened for 3 hours without judgment. When Aunt Rebecca called asking for money, Marcus had advised her to block the number. When Lena doubted herself, doubted her future, doubted everything, Marcus reminded her she was exceptional. You have a gift, Lena, he told her last month over station coffee. Most researchers study animals. You understand them. There's a difference. She'd believed him, trusted him, loved him like family. The snare incident had faded to distant memory, a one-time encounter with poachers, she'd convinced herself. Unrelated to the research. Just bad luck in bad territory. She'd been so wrong. Late October brought early snow to the Bitterroot Range. Lena was tracking GPS collar signals in the northern sector, following coordinates for a 3-year-old female designated MT-47. The wolf's signal had been stationary for 18 hours, unusual but not alarming. Could indicate a kill site, a rest area, den preparation. Lena hiked through ankle-deep powder, breath fogging in air that smelled of pine and coming winter. The coordinates led to a ravine she'd visited dozens of times, a natural corridor wolves used when moving between territories. MT-47's signal came from a clearing surrounded by Douglas fir. What Lena found made her knees buckle. The wolf lay on her side, already stiffening in the cold. Not dead from natural causes, her pelt had been removed with surgical precision, the kind of skinning that preserved maximum value. But worse, her abdomen had been opened, specific organs harvested. Kidneys, liver, gallbladder, all gone. And beside the carcass, smashed deliberately, MT-47's GPS collar. Lena's hands shook as she photographed everything. The precise cuts. The missing organs. The destroyed tracking equipment. The drag marks indicating the wolf had been killed elsewhere, then moved here. Professional work. Calculated work. Work that required knowing exactly which wolves wore collars. She checked the data logs on her tablet. MT-47's last movement, yesterday at 3:47 p.m. The grad students had been in town. Dr. Chen was in Missoula for a conference. Marcus had been alone at the station. Lena hiked back through gathering darkness, her mind racing through 2 years of small inconsistencies she dismissed. Collar failures always in remote areas. Marcus volunteering for solo field checks. His private cabin off-limits to everyone. The expensive truck he drove on a researcher's salary. His vague answers about funding sources for station improvements. She waited until the grad students left for their weekly supply run to Missoula. Waited until the station was empty except for Marcus in his office, reviewing data at his computer. Knocked on his door frame, her phone recording video in her jacket pocket. "Marcus? Do you have a minute?" He looked up, smiling that familiar warm smile that had made her feel safe for 2 years. "Always. What's up, kiddo?" The nickname stabbed through her chest. She'd loved when he called her that. "I found MT-47 today." She kept her voice level, clinical. "In the northern ravine." His expression didn't change. "Natural mortality?" "No." Lena pulled out her phone, showed him the photos. Someone killed her. Harvested her organs. Destroyed her collar. She watched his face carefully. Watched for surprise, horror, confusion, the reactions an innocent person would show. Instead, something shifted behind his eyes. A calculation. A decision being made. "Come in," Marcus said quietly. "Close the door." Lena's instinct screamed at her to run. But she needed to know. Needed to hear him say it. She stepped inside. Left the door open 6 inches. Marcus stood, moved to the window, looked out at the darkening forest. When he spoke, his voice carried a weariness she'd never heard before. "How much did you see?" The admission hit like a fist to the stomach. "You're killing them. The wolves we're supposed to be protecting." "Protecting doesn't pay, Lena." He turned to face her, and the man she'd known was gone, replaced by someone calculating, cold. "Do you know what researchers make? What I make after 20 years and a PhD? $63,000 a year. Do you know what wolf organs sell for in traditional medicine markets? What pharmaceutical companies pay for ethically sourced specimens? There's nothing ethical about. A single gallbladder, $4,000. Liver, $3,000. A complete harvest from one wolf, $12,000 to $15,000. His voice was matter-of-fact, like discussing weather patterns. "I've been doing this for 8 years. Made over $600,000. Enough to send my daughter to medical school. Enough to pay off my ex-wife. Enough to actually live instead of barely surviving on grant money." Lena backed toward the door. "You set that snare. The one that caught Ash." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "Who?" "The young wolf. 2 years ago. I found him." She stopped, realizing her mistake. "You freed an injured wolf and didn't report it." Marcus's smile was thin, dangerous. "Federal violation. Career-ending violation. Especially for someone applying to graduate programs on my recommendation. I'm reporting this. All of it." Lena's hand found the door frame. "No, you're not." Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket, thumb hovering over the screen. "Because if you do, I'll bury you. I'll tell them you fabricated evidence. That you've been unstable since your parents died. That you freed trapped wolves and tampered with research data. I have colleagues at every major institution. Who do you think they'll believe? A respected senior researcher with 20 years of publications, or a troubled orphan with a history of emotional problems? The words were designed to cut, and they did. But beneath the hurt, Lena felt something else crystallizing: clarity. You're right, she said softly. They might believe you. But you just confessed on camera. She pulled out her phone, showed him the recording icon. Active. Transmitting to cloud storage. Marcus's face went white, then red. You. Lena ran. She grabbed her field pack from the equipment room, sprinted for her truck in the parking area. Behind her, Marcus's voice. Stop her. Someone stop her. She reached the truck, fumbled with keys. The engine turned over just as Marcus crashed through the station door. But when she threw it in reverse, the steering pulled hard left. Slash tire. Front driver's side. Marcus walked toward her slowly, phone to his ear. Yeah, we have a situation. The girl I told you about. She found the ravine site. No, she has photos. I know. Yes, do it. Lena ran for the only place she knew better than roads, the forest. Behind her, Marcus shouted coordinates into his phone. Ahead of her, 40 miles of wilderness, coming darkness, and men with guns who'd killed for less than she knew. She had no phone signal, no weapon, no help. But she'd survived worse than this. She'd survived this too. She ran into the trees as the first gunshot cracked through mountain air, and didn't look back. Lena's boots hammered against forest floor, her breath tearing through her lungs in ragged gasps. Pine branches whipped her face, drawing blood she couldn't feel through the adrenaline flooding her system. Behind her, voices, coordinated shouts, the systematic approach of men who hunted for a living. She'd grabbed her emergency pack, the one she kept stocked for overnight field assignments. Water purification tablets, energy bars, fire starter, basic first aid. No phone signal out here. No radio that could reach anyone who'd help. The research station sat in a dead zone, surrounded by mountains that swallowed electronic signals like stones in deep water. Another gunshot cracked through the twilight. This one closer. Lena dropped behind a fallen log, pressing herself into rotting wood and moss. Through gaps in the bark, she saw flashlight beams sweeping through trees 50 yards back. 3 lights. 3 hunters. Marcus's voice carried through the forest. She can't have gone far. She's on foot, injured, scared. We find her, we contain this, we move on. Injured. Lena looked down at her left arm. The bullet had grazed her bicep. She hadn't even felt it happen in the chaos. Blood soaked through her jacket sleeve, warm and sticky. The wound burned now that she noticed it, sharp and insistent. She wrapped her bandana around it, pulled tight with her teeth, kept moving. The forest sloped downward into ravines she'd mapped 100 times. She knew every game trail, every creek crossing, every rocky outcrop. But so did Marcus. He taught her half of what she knew about this terrain. Stay off the trails. Use the hard ground. Break tracking patterns. Lena moved through a creek, letting cold water fill her boots, using stones to avoid leaving prints. Scrambled up the far bank through thick brush that would hide her passage. Headed northwest, toward. She stopped. Northwest led directly to Ashwood territory. The pack's range covered 12 square miles of the densest, most remote wilderness in the sector. 7 wolves, notoriously aggressive toward human intrusion. They'd killed 2 hunting dogs last year, sent a hiker to the hospital with defensive bites. Even experienced researchers gave Ashwood territory wide clearance. Marcus knew that. He was herding her. Lena checked her GPS unit, battery at 43%. The boundary markers showed clearly. She was half a mile from the edge of Ashwood's core territory. Behind her, the flashlight beams had spread into a search pattern, cutting off eastern and southern routes. They were driving her toward the wolves deliberately. Let the pack do the work. Clean, deniable, natural causes. Lena. Marcus's voice, closer now, almost conversational. Think about what you're doing. You go into Ashwood territory, you don't come out. Those wolves will tear you apart. Come back. We'll talk. We'll figure this out. She almost laughed. Figure it out. As if she hadn't just recorded him confessing to 8 years of systematic poaching. As if men who'd killed for money would suddenly develop conscience. Lena ran northwest. The forest changed as she crossed into disputed territory, older growth, thicker canopy, the kind of primeval woodland that felt like stepping back 1,000 years. Territorial markers appeared, scratch posts on tree trunks, scat piles, the distinctive scent wolves used to warn intruders. Turn back. This is not your place. Death waits here. She ignored every instinct and kept running. Full darkness had fallen when she burst into the clearing. Her headlamp beam swept across open ground, catching the reflection of multiple eyes at the tree line. Lena's legs gave out, dumping her onto rocky soil. Her lungs burned. Her arms screamed. Blood loss made the world tilt and swim. The wolves emerged from shadow like smoke gaining substance. 7 of them, moving with the coordinated silence of a pack that had hunted together for years. They formed a loose semicircle around her, not aggressive positioning, not yet, but evaluating. Testing. The largest stepped forward, massive, battle-scarred, moving with authority that needed no display. His right front leg carried a pronounced limp, old injury that had healed imperfectly. One ear was torn, a pale scar crossing his muzzle. Amber eyes met hers across 15 feet of moonlit clearing. Lena's world stopped. Ash. The word came out as a whisper, broken by exhaustion and disbelief. The alpha's ears flicked forward. His head tilted slightly, recognition flickering across features not designed for human expression. She'd saved him 3 years ago. A dying pup in a snare, for hours of whispered promises and desperate first aid. She'd named him for the grey-black markings around his eyes, markings that had darkened with age into something fierce and beautiful. Behind her, crashing through underbrush, Marcus and his hunters. There. The clearing. Flashlight beams swept across the wolves. The pack tensed, bodies lowering into defensive posture. A younger wolf, probably last year's pup, judging by size, growled low in his throat. But Ash didn't move. Stood between Lena and the approaching men, solid as stone, calculating. Marcus broke into the clearing, rifle raised. 2 men flanked him, professionals, Lena realized. Not researchers. Hired muscle who'd done this work before. Jesus Christ, one of them breathed. 7 wolves. That's the Ashwood pack. Marcus kept his rifle trained on Ash. Back away from her slowly. Make noise, look big, they'll scatter. But they didn't scatter. Didn't retreat. The pack held position, and slowly, deliberately, they shifted formation. 2 wolves moved left, melting into shadow at the clearing's edge. 3 circled right, using terrain and darkness. The juvenile positioned himself directly behind Lena, between her and the trees, but facing the men. Defensive formation. Protection pattern. They were guarding her. This is wrong, the second hunter said, backing up a step. Wolves don't do this. They don't protect humans. They don't. Shoot them. Marcus's voice was flat, certain. All of them. We'll report an aggressive pack, say we had to defend ourselves. He aimed at Ash. His finger moved to the trigger. The alpha didn't flinch. Didn't retreat. Just stood there, scarred and limping and absolutely fearless, staring down the barrel of a rifle to protect a girl who'd once protected him. Lena struggled to her knees, swaying. Marcus, please. Please don't. You should have minded your own business, Lena. He sighted down the barrel. You should have stayed quiet. The gunshot cracked across the clearing. But Ash stood untouched. The bullet had gone wide, intentionally or not, Lena couldn't tell. Marcus's hands were shaking. I can't. He lowered the rifle slightly. They're research animals. Collared. If I shoot them, there'll be investigations, GPS data, questions. Then shoot the girl, the first hunter said coldly. Wolf attack. Case closed. He raised his own rifle, aiming at Lena's chest. Ash moved. Not the Hollywood charge, but real wolf behavior. Forward lunge, teeth bared, a roar that was more bare than canine. The pack surged with him, sudden coordinated aggression that sent all 3 men stumbling backward. A rifle discharged into the air. Someone screamed. The wolves pressed forward, not biting, not killing, herding. Driving the men back toward the tree line with calculated intimidation. Marcus tripped over roots, fell hard. His rifle skittered away into darkness. When he looked up, Ash stood over him, jaws inches from his throat. "Don't move," Lena said, her voice carrying across the clearing with surprising strength. "Don't move and he won't kill you." Marcus froze, chest heaving, face white with terror. Lena pulled out her backup phone, the ancient one she kept for emergencies, and opened the camera. "Start talking," she said. "Everything. Names, buyers, how long it's been happening. All of it." "You can't talk." Her scream startled even the wolves. And Marcus, broken beneath a wolf's gaze, began to confess. Marcus's confession poured out in fractured sentences, his eyes never leaving Ash's teeth. 8 years. Started small, opportunistic kills, made it look natural. Then I found buyers. Traditional medicine markets in Asia pay premium for North American wolf organs. Gallbladders, especially. Some pharmaceutical companies, they don't ask questions about sourcing. Lena's phone recorded every word, her hands steadier than they'd been all night. Behind Marcus, his 2 hunters stood frozen, rifles lowered, watching the pack circle with professional respect born of fear. "How much?" Lena demanded. 600,000. Maybe more. I stopped counting. Marcus's voice cracked. "My grandfather owns the storage facility in Derby. He processes the harvests. Ships them through his taxidermy business. Legal paperwork, export permits for naturally deceased specimens. Nobody checks. Nobody cares. Names. Give me names." Marcus listed them, 12 other researchers across Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. Research station directors, graduate students, even 2 park rangers. A network protected by institutional respect and academic credentials. People who should have been guardians, transformed into predators. The juvenile wolf whined softly behind Lena. She glanced back, he'd settled into a sitting position, watching her with curious intensity. Protecting but not threatening. The behavior was unprecedented, impossible by every wildlife biology text she'd studied. Ash maintained his position over Marcus, muscles coiled, ready. But he hadn't bitten. Hadn't torn flesh. Just held dominance with presence alone. Lena's mind raced. A recorded confession was evidence, but evidence could disappear. Men with money hired lawyers who made problems vanish. She'd seen it happen when her parents died, when insurance companies claimed the accident was their fault, when legal systems protected the powerful. This needed to be bigger. Undeniable. Public. She opened her university research account, the one every field assistant used to log data and observations. The account that streamed to the wildlife biology department's public portal. Students, faculty, researchers worldwide had access. Lena switched her phone to video, pointed the camera at Marcus and the wolves. "Say it again," she told him. "Everything. For the camera." Marcus's eyes widened, understanding dawning. "You can't say it again." She pressed the live stream button. The viewer count started at 0, climbed to 3, then 15. Somewhere in Missoula, someone was watching. Maybe more than one person. The numbers ticked upward, 47, 62, 89. Marcus saw the screen, saw the climbing count, and something broke in his face. The calculation drained away, leaving only defeat. He talked. Gave more names, more details. Described the killing methods, the processing facility, the shipping routes. Implicated his grandfather directly, provided bank account numbers, named pharmaceutical buyers. The viewer count hit 203. Distant sirens wailed through the forest, faint, but growing louder. Someone had called authorities. Federal rangers, probably, since this was national forest and involved protected species. Ash's ears flicked back, tracking the sound. The pack shifted nervously, sensing change. "They're coming," Lena said softly. "You can go. You should go." But the wolves didn't leave. They held position, watching the tree line where flashlights now appeared. Different flashlights, official vehicles, voices calling for law enforcement identification. Federal wildlife agents. "Anyone in the clearing, identify yourself." Lena stood slowly, keeping her movements calm. "Lena Hart. Field Research Assistant. I'm unarmed. There are 3 armed men here and 7 wolves. Are you injured?" Gunshot wound, left arm. Not life-threatening. The wolves aren't attacking, they're protecting me. Silence from the tree line. Then, say that again. The wolves are protecting me. Don't shoot them. Please. Ranger Ellis emerged first, a woman in her 50s with grey hair and 30 years of field experience etched into her weathered face. Her sidearm was holstered, hands visible. 2 other rangers flanked her, weapons drawn but pointed at the ground. They stopped at the clearing's edge, taking in the scene, Lena bleeding and swaying on her feet, Marcus pinned beneath a massive alpha wolf, 2 hunters frozen with their rifles on the ground, and 6 more wolves positioned in a defensive perimeter. Miss Hart, Ranger Ellis said carefully, are you controlling these animals? Lena almost laughed. No. They're protecting me because 3 years ago, I saved one of them. The alpha, his name is Ash. He was caught in a snare. I freed him, treated his wounds, let him go. He remembers. Ellis studied Ash, noting the scarred muzzle, torn ear, the pronounced limp. That's impossible. Wolves don't form bonds with humans who. Watch the live stream, Lena interrupted, holding up her phone. I just broadcast everything. 4,000 people have watched it. Marcus Veldon confessed to 8 years of systematic wolf poaching. His grandfather runs the processing operation. There are 12 other researchers involved. It's all recorded. The phone showed 4,247 views and climbing. Ellis spoke into her radio. We need Fish and Wildlife, FBI, and medical. Multiple suspects, confession recorded, possible trafficking network. And someone contact University of Montana. Apparently there's a viral video we need to secure. Paramedics approached with a stretcher, moving slowly, watching the wolves. Ash finally stepped back from Marcus, allowing the rangers to handcuff him. The 2 hunters surrendered without resistance, hands raised, all fight gone. As paramedics treated Lena's arm, she watched the pack. They'd retreated to the clearing's far edge, still present but no longer aggressive. Ash sat at the center, his pack arranged around him, a family, she realized. Not just hunters or survivors, but something more complex. You need to come with us, Ellis said gently. Give a full statement, medical evaluation, witness protection probably. Wait. Lena pulled away from the paramedics, walked slowly toward the pack. Ash stood, watching her approach. She stopped 10 feet away, close enough to see the intelligence in those amber eyes, far enough to respect his wildness. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for remembering. Ash's tail moved once, a single, deliberate wag. Then he turned, and the pack melted into the forest like smoke dispersing at dawn. Lena watched until the last shadow disappeared. When she turned back, Ranger Ellis was staring at her phone, reading something that made her eyebrows climb. Your video has 4,000 to 7,000 views. News outlets are picking it up. This is going to be everywhere. Lena nodded, suddenly exhausted. Good. Let it be everywhere. Let everyone see what was happening. What we allowed to happen. As they loaded her into the ambulance, her phone buzzed with notifications. Messages from reporters, lawyers, activists, researchers. The world was waking up to Ashwood clearing. And nothing, Lena knew, would ever be the same. 24 hours after Ashwood clearing, Lena's video had been viewed 4.2 million times. She watched the numbers climb from a hospital bed in Missoula, her left arm bandaged and immobilized, for antibiotics dripping into her right. The gunshot wound required surgery. The bullet had grazed bone, leaving fragments the doctors spent 3 hours extracting. They said she'd have full mobility eventually. The scar would be permanent. Her phone never stopped buzzing. CNN, BBC, National Geographic, The New York Times. Everyone wanted the story of the girl saved by wolves. Everyone wanted to know how she'd trained them, controlled them, made wild animals behave impossibly. She didn't answer. Let them speculate. The truth was simpler and stranger than any story they'd invent. She'd shown kindness once, and it had been remembered. Federal wildlife investigators moved fast. Within 18 hours of the livestream, they'd raided the storage facility in Derby owned by Marcus's grandfather, Harold Veldon. What they found made international headlines. 217 wolf pelts, catalogued and graded by quality. Commercial freezers containing harvested organs labeled with dates and locations. Shipping manifests to buyers in China, Vietnam, South Korea. Bank records showing wire transfers totaling $2.3 million over 8 years. Documentation implicating 37 individuals across 3 states, not 12 like Marcus had confessed, but 37. Harold Veldon died of a heart attack during the raid. 74 years old, collapsing in his own processing room surrounded by evidence of systematic slaughter. The news called it poetic justice. Lena called it too easy an escape. The investigation expanded like wildfire through dry timber. Research stations across Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming were raided simultaneously. Graduate students were arrested at universities. 2 park rangers turned themselves in before warrants were issued. The biggest wildlife poaching network in U.S. history, built by people trusted to protect what they were destroying. But it was the university emails that shattered Lena's remaining faith. Leaked documents showed Bitrate research station administrators had known about irregularities for 3 years. Collar failures statistically impossible. Marcus's unexplained income. Complaints from junior researchers that had been dismissed or buried. The university had overlooked everything because Marcus brought in grant money, $400,000 annually in federal funding, corporate partnerships, and private donations. Money protected him. Prestige protected him. The system protected him until a bleeding girl and 7 wolves forced the world to watch. The university president resigned on day 3. Student protests shut down campus for a week. The biology department chair gave a press conference where she cried, real tears or performance. Lena couldn't tell from the hospital TV. We failed in our mission, the chair said. We failed the wolves, we failed our students, we failed public trust. Lena changed the channel. Her phone rang, Aunt Rebecca, calling for the first time in 3 years. Lena blocked the number without listening to the voicemail. Whatever reconciliation her aunt wanted now was about association with fame, not actual family. Dr. Sarah Chen visited on day 4, bringing flowers and guilt. I should have seen it, she said, sitting in the plastic visitor's chair, looking older than Lena remembered. I recommended you to that station. I put you in his path. You also taught me everything I needed to survive it, Lena replied. Her voice was hoarse from giving statements to investigators. You taught me to trust animals more than people. That skill saved my life. Chen's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Lena. I know. But sorry doesn't change anything. What matters now is what we do next. The legal battle began before Lena left the hospital. Marcus's lawyers, expensive ones, paid for by family money that had profited from poaching, filed motions claiming entrapment. They argued Lena had coerced confession under duress, that the wolves constituted a deadly threat, that Marcus had been traumatized into false admissions. Her public defender was 27, overworked, and honest enough to admit he was outmatched. Then the donations started. Someone, Lena never learned who, set up a crowdfunding campaign, Legal Defense for Lena Hart. The goal was $50,000 for a competent attorney. They raised $180,000 in 72 hours. Messages poured in from across the world. Students, researchers, people who'd lost faith in institutions and found it restored by one girl's courage. People who understood that sometimes the system only changed when someone forced it to. A law firm in Seattle, specializing in environmental cases, with victories against oil companies and logging corporations, took her case pro bono. You gave those wolves a voice, the lead attorney told her over video call. We'll make sure yours is heard too. 3 months after Ashwood clearing, Lena testified before a congressional committee investigating wildlife crime. She'd spent those months in physical therapy, relearning full mobility in her arm. The scar tissue was thick, raised, a permanent reminder written in her own flesh. She'd also spent them preparing testimony with her lawyers, reviewing evidence, learning to speak without shaking. The hearing room in Washington, D.C. was nothing like Montana wilderness. Fluorescent lights, suited politicians, cameras recording every word. Lena wore clothes borrowed from Dr. Chen, professional, adult, nothing like the field gear that felt like her real skin. Miss Hart, the committee chair began, can you describe, in your own words, what happened the night of October 23rd? Lena took a breath, then spoke for 40 minutes without interruption. She described finding Ash in the snare 3 years earlier, the choice to save him despite regulations. The 2 years working under Marcus, trusting him, loving him like family. Discovering MT-47's body. The confession, the chase, the clearing where impossible things happened. The wolves remembered kindness, she concluded. They remembered mercy shown to one of their own, and they repaid it. Maybe we should learn from that. The gallery erupted in applause. The committee chair had to call for order. Questions followed for 2 hours. Some senators seemed genuinely moved. Others asked pointed questions about federal violations, unauthorized wildlife treatment, whether her actions had emboldened others to interfere with protected species. I broke a rule to save a life, Lena answered. If that's wrong, then I'll accept the consequences. But I won't apologize for it. More applause. In the end, Lena didn't just want punishment for poachers. She demanded transformation. We need mandatory whistleblower protections, she told the committee. We need independent oversight of research stations, not self-reporting. We need indigenous conservation partnerships. The tribes understood coexistence before we forgot it. We need systems that make it easy to report abuse and hard to hide it. Some committee members actually took notes. Charges against Lena for treating wildlife without authorization were quietly dropped. Her lawyers never explained why, but she suspected the optics. Prosecuting the girl who'd exposed massive corruption while defending herself from murderers wouldn't play well. 4 months after the clearing, Lena returned to Montana. She turned down media interviews, book deals, documentary proposals. Everyone wanted her story repackaged for consumption. She refused them all. This wasn't about her, it was about what humans owed the wild places they'd almost destroyed. Late November afternoon, she hiked back to Ashwood territory for the first time since that night. Her arm ached in the cold, it always would, the doctors said. Permanent nerve damage, chronic pain, the price of survival. She carried venison in her pack, ethically sourced, expensive, paid for with settlement money from the university lawsuit. The amount was undisclosed, sealed by lawyers, but enough to matter. Enough to change futures. Lena sat on the fallen log where she'd collapsed 4 months ago, bleeding and certain she'd die. Now the clearing was peaceful, snow dusting the ground, late afternoon light slanting through bare branches. She waited 2 hours, thinking maybe the pack had moved territories, maybe Ash had forgotten in the chaos of investigation and media frenzy. Then, movement in the trees. Ash emerged first, his pack flowing behind him like extensions of his shadow. He'd gained weight, healthier, stronger, the limp less pronounced. His amber eyes found hers immediately. He walked straight to her, no hesitation, and sat 3 feet away. Close enough that she could see the patterns in his fur, count the scars that mapped his survival. Far enough to maintain what he was, wild, untamed, belonging to himself. The pack arranged themselves around the clearing, not defensive now, just present. The juvenile from that night had grown, nearly adult-sized. 2 new wolves she didn't recognize, yearlings, probably, from last spring's litter. The pack was thriving. Lena placed the venison on the ground between them, then backed away. I kept my promise, she said softly. They're investigating, prosecuting, changing laws. It's not perfect, but it's better. Because of you. Ash watched her, and in that gaze she saw acknowledgement, respect, something beyond simple animal response. Not domestication, recognition. She turned to leave, respecting boundaries, honoring wildness. At the tree line, she looked back once. Ash stood watching, his pack beginning to feed behind him. His tail moved in that single, deliberate wag she remembered from 3 years ago. Then he returned to his family, and Lena walked back through forest that no longer felt threatening, understanding what Ash had taught her. Survival wasn't just about strength. Sometimes it was about remembering who helped you when you needed it most, and showing up when they needed you in return. 6 months after Ashwood clearing, Lena Hart stood on 40 acres of Montana wilderness she now owned. The land bordered Ashwood Territory's eastern edge, purchased with settlement money and donations that kept arriving despite her requests to stop. People wanted to support what she represented: courage against corruption, protection of wild places, proof that individuals could challenge systems. She'd used the money carefully. 40 acres for $120,000, negotiated down from asking price when the seller learned who was buying. Another $80,000 for a small research cabin, Solar panels, minimal environmental impact, composting toilet, rainwater collection. Everything designed to exist without dominating. A wooden sign hung at the property entrance, Hart Wildlife Observation Station. Her parents' surname, honoring people who taught her to love animals before they died. A foundation built on loss, transformed into purpose. This wasn't about studying wolves. It was about protecting them. Lena had partnered with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, whose ancestral lands included this territory before displacement and broken treaties. She employed 3 Salish rangers, Thomas, Marie, and Joseph, who understood coexistence as inherited knowledge rather than academic theory. They monitored for poaching using trail cameras and drones, documented wolf behavior non-invasively, and ran education programs teaching ranchers and tourists that wolves weren't enemies, just neighbors with different needs. The work was harder than research had been. Research asked questions and published answers. Protection required daily vigilance, constant advocacy, endless patience with people who saw wolves as threats to livestock, livelihoods, and a way of life that required dominance over wilderness. But Lena had learned patience from Ash. Had learned that survival sometimes meant holding position against overwhelming odds, trusting that eventually, people would see. The pack visited weekly now, sometimes daily. They'd learned Lena's schedule, morning coffee on the cabin porch, afternoon equipment checks, evening data logging. They appeared at the property boundary, never crossing uninvited, just present. Observing her as she observed them. Ash controlled access to core territory with a specific howl pattern, 3 ascending notes, pause, 2 descending. When Lena heard it, she knew she could enter without conflict. She'd mapped the signal over months, learning to distinguish it from general communication. Respect, not ownership. Trust, not control. Other researchers visited, amazed that the notorious Ashwood pack tolerated human presence. They brought cameras, theories, grant proposals for studying human-wolf bonding mechanisms. Lena turned them all away. It's not tolerance, she explained to a professor from Berkeley who'd flown in with a research team. It's trust. There's a difference. They don't trust humans. They trust me, specifically, because of history between us. You can't study that. You can only honor it. The professor left disappointed. His paper would speculate about her methods without understanding the foundation. She'd bled for these wolves before asking anything from them. Marcus Veldon was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole. His assets, house, truck, investment accounts containing $640,000 in poaching profits, were seized entirely. Additional fines totaling $4.7 million, though he'd never pay them. Bankruptcy was filed before the appeals process even started. 31 other individuals received sentences ranging from probation to 18 years. The network was dismantled completely, trafficking routes exposed, buyers prosecuted internationally. But Lena knew this wasn't the only operation. Money always found ways to exploit what should be protected. The work would never truly end, just shift locations, methods, faces. She attended Marcus's sentencing. Sat in the gallery, watching him shuffle in wearing orange jumpsuit and chains, looking 20 years older than when she'd called him mentor. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Marcus turned to look at her. I'm sorry, Lena. For everything. She didn't respond. Sorry meant nothing weighed against 8 years of systematic slaughter. Sorry didn't resurrect 200 wolves. Sorry didn't return trust she'd given to a man who'd weaponized it. She walked out before the judge finished speaking. Healing wasn't linear. Lena learned that through therapy, weekly sessions she'd resisted at first, thinking she didn't need help. She'd survived worse, she was fine. She wasn't fine. PTSD from the chase, from nearly dying, from betrayal that cut deeper than bullets. Nightmares where Marcus morphed into her dead father, where wolves turned predatory, where forest became maze with no escape. Her therapist, Dr. Patricia Moss, was patient. Trauma rewires how we see the world. It makes sense that you'd struggle to trust after someone you loved tried to kill you. I don't love him, Lena said reflexively. Past tense. You loved him when you thought he was who he pretended to be. That truth hurt worse than her arm ever had. But slowly, Lena built friendships. Dr. Chen became genuine mentor without ulterior motives, visiting monthly to consult on observation station logistics. The 3 Salish Rangers taught her traditional stories about wolves, not as threats but as teachers. She learned to laugh again, tentatively, like a skill she'd forgotten. Still wary. Still scarred. But healing in inches. 7 months after the clearing, Ranger Ellis called with unexpected news. Ash's mate is pregnant, Ellis said without preamble. Denning behavior confirmed. Pack will expand to potentially 10 or 12 wolves by spring. Their territory is already pushing into ranching land south of your property. We're getting conflict reports. Lena's stomach dropped. What kind of conflicts? Livestock harassment, some kills. Ranchers are demanding action. Meaning lethal removal permits. No. The word came out sharp. We mediate. There has to be another way. That's why I'm calling. We're organizing a meeting, ranchers, tribal elders, conservationists, and you. Your voice carries weight now. Will you help? Lena wanted to refuse. Wanted to stay in her protected 40 acres where she controlled variables and outcomes. But Ash had put himself between her and bullets. The least she could do was put herself between his pack and people who'd kill them for existing. When? Next Tuesday. County Meeting Hall. Prepare for hostility. The meeting room smelled of old coffee and institutional frustration. 20 people crammed into space meant for 15. 5 ranchers weathered by decades of Montana winters. 3 tribal elders whose quiet authority commanded instant respect. 2 federal wildlife officials, Ranger Ellis, 4 conservationists from environmental nonprofits, and Lena. The ranchers glared at her with undisguised resentment. She was the girl from the viral video, the one who'd made wolves sympathetic, who'd complicated their simple solution: shoot the predators, protect the livestock, maintain the old ways. Lead rancher was Tom Garrett, 67, third-generation cattle operator whose family had worked this land for 90 years. He stood when the meeting opened. I've lost 8 calves this season, he said bluntly. 2 pregnant heifers worth $3,000 each. I can't afford to feed wolves while my operation bleeds money. I want removal permits approved today. Murmurs of agreement from the other ranchers. Lena stood slowly, feeling 20 pairs of eyes track her movement. Mr. Garrett, I've reviewed the livestock loss data for this region. Total confirmed wolf kills, 14 animals across 5 ranches. Total cattle in the area, approximately 2,400. That's 0.6% loss. That's $14,000, Garrett shot back. I know. And I'm proposing a compensation program, verified wolf kills reimbursed at market value, funded by conservation partnerships. Plus improved livestock protection, range riders, fencing upgrades, guard dogs. Studies show these methods reduce wolf conflicts by 70%. So you want us to change our entire operation because you made a pet out of a wild animal? The words stung because they were designed to. Lena kept her voice level. Ash saved my life because I saved his 3 years ago. Not because he's a pet, because wolves remember. They're intelligent, social, capable of something we're supposed to be good at, recognizing when someone helped us and responding accordingly. She paused, meeting each rancher's eyes. What if we stopped seeing this as us versus them? What if coexistence was possible? An older rancher, sitting in the back, spoke up. You really think that Wolf remembers you after 3 years? I know he does. The question is, will we remember what we owe this land, these animals, the balance that existed before we decided we owned everything? Silence filled the room. Then Thomas, one of the Salish Rangers, stood. Our ancestors lived alongside wolves for 10,000 years. We took what we needed, they took what they needed. Balance. When white settlers came, they killed wolves because dominance was easier than sharing. We're still paying for that choice. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Compromises emerged slowly, painfully, protected corridors for wolf movement, compensation fund seeded with $50,000 from conservation groups, education initiatives, improved livestock protection subsidized by federal grants. Not perfect. Not everyone happy. But progress. Walking out, Tom Garrett stopped Lena in the parking lot. I still think you're naive, he said. But you've got courage. I'll give you that. We'll try your methods for 1 year. If losses continue, permits get approved. That's fair, Lena agreed. She drove home as sun set over mountains, thinking about Ash's future pups, about ranchers willing to compromise, about how change happened in small victories that accumulated over time. The work was just beginning. Spring came to Montana with the violence of rebirth, snowmelt flooding creeks, wildflowers erupting through thawing ground, and in a den hidden deep in Ashwood territory. 5 wolf pups taking their first breaths. Lena knew about the birth before official reports confirmed it. Ash's behavior had changed 2 weeks prior, more territorial patrols, increased scent marking, the pack staying closer to core territory. Classic denning protection patterns. She didn't approach. Didn't try to observe, photograph, or document. This moment belonged to the wolves, not to human curiosity. Instead, she monitored from trail cameras positioned at respectful distances, cameras the pack knew about, had investigated, and apparently accepted. The footage showed Ash bringing food to the den entrance, the pack taking turns on guard duty, the careful choreography of wild family protecting its most vulnerable. 4 weeks after birth, Lena caught the first clear footage of pups emerging, 5 bundles of dark fur tumbling over each other, play fighting with the intensity of creatures learning to survive. One pup had gray-black markings around his eyes, exactly like Ash. She named him Shadow in her private notes, not claiming ownership, just acknowledging recognition. A new generation carrying forward the story of mercy repaid. Late May evening, Lena sat on her cabin porch watching sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. Coffee steamed in her hands, the kind of peaceful moment she'd never imagined possible during those desperate days fleeing through darkness. Movement at the tree line caught her attention. Ash emerged alone, unusual. The pack typically traveled together, especially with pups to protect. He crossed the boundary onto her property without hesitation, approaching closer than ever before, 20 feet, then 15, then 10. He sat, watching her with those amber eyes that held 3 years of shared history. Lena remained perfectly still, letting him choose. Letting this moment unfold without human interference. Ash stood, took 3 more steps. 8 feet away now. Close enough that she could hear his breathing, see the silver threading through his muzzle, count each scar that mapped his survival. "Hey, Ash," she whispered. "Your pups are beautiful." His ears flicked forward, processing her voice, her tone, the emotions carried in words he couldn't understand but somehow recognized. For 30 seconds, they existed in silence, human and wolf, survivor and survivor, connected by the strange arithmetic of kindness remembered and repaid. Then Ash turned, moving back toward the tree line with that distinctive limp she'd recognize anywhere. At the edge of shadow, he paused, looked back once. In that glance, Lena saw goodbye. Not ending, evolving. His role was changing. He was father now, alpha of growing pack, responsible for teaching pups to hunt, to survive, to understand the dangerous world of humans who sometimes helped and sometimes killed. He couldn't keep visiting a human's porch. Couldn't teach his children that people were safe when most weren't. This was his final gift, closure, acknowledgement, release. "I understand," Lena said, voice thick with emotion. "I'll protect them, Ash. Your pups, your pack, your forest. I promise." A howl rose from the tree line, Ash's voice, powerful and ancient. The pack joined in, chorus of family, territory, life continuing despite everything that tried to destroy it. Lena listened until the last echo faded, then went inside and opened her laptop. Email from the National Wildlife Federation waited in her inbox. Proposal to name their new conservation initiative after her, recognizing her courage in exposing corruption and protecting wolves. She typed a response, name it after Ash. He's the one who changed everything. Sent. Closed laptop. Sat in gathering darkness, listening to wolves sing. People asked Lena how her life changed after that night in Ashwood clearing. They expected dramatic answers, profound revelations, Hollywood endings where the girl and the wolves lived happily ever after in perfect harmony. But the truth was simpler and more complex than any story they'd invent. She learned that mercy wasn't weakness, it was the most powerful force in nature. That memory spanned species, years, and impossible odds. That one act of compassion, even when it seemed small or futile, could echo across time and save lives you'd never know about. Ash taught her that we're all part of the same story, predator and prey, human and wild, broken and healing. That survival isn't about dominating others, it's about recognizing when someone needs help, and showing up. The observation station thrived. Educational programs brought school groups to learn about coexistence. The compensation fund reduced rancher conflicts by 63% in the first year. Tom Garrett became an unlikely ally, speaking at conferences about sustainable ranching alongside wolf conservation. Lena enrolled in University of Montana's graduate program, studying wildlife biology under Dr. Chen's mentorship. She'd spent her career protecting what others tried to exploit, teaching new generations that wilderness wasn't something to conquer but to honor. Marcus's confession led to permanent reforms, mandatory whistleblower protections for researchers, independent oversight of field stations, indigenous partnerships in federal conservation programs. The system wasn't fixed, systems never fully are, but it was better. Shadow and his 4 siblings grew strong. By fall, they'd be hunting with the pack. By winter, they'd understand territory, hierarchy, survival. Maybe one day, Shadow would lead his own pack, carry forward the legacy of an alpha who'd remembered kindness. Every time Lena heard howls drift across the valley, she remembered a terrified 16-year-old with bleeding hands and a dying wolf pup. She remembered choosing compassion over convenience, mercy over regulations, connection over fear. And she knew, Ash remembered too. Some debts can never be repaid, only honored. In the space between wild and human, between memory and instinct, between one act of kindness and a life saved years later, that's exactly what they did. The wolves taught her the most important lesson: we're not separate from nature. We're part of it. And when we protect the wild, we protect ourselves. If this story moved you, if you believe in protecting wild places and the creatures who call them home, take action today. Like this video to help the algorithm share this message with others who need to hear it. Share with someone who loves wildlife, who works in conservation, or who needs to remember that courage can change systems. Comment below with your city and tell us, have you ever shown mercy to an animal? Have you witnessed the intelligence of wild creatures? Your stories matter. They remind us why this work is essential. Subscribe for more true stories about the bond between humans and wildlife, about people who chose courage over compliance, about the moments that change everything. Most importantly, support wolf conservation in your area. Donate to wildlife organizations. Advocate for stronger protections. Teach the next generation that coexistence is possible. Because somewhere tonight, a wolf remembers kindness. And somewhere, a person needs to remember that their choices matter, that mercy isn't wasted, that courage counts, that one act of compassion can echo across years and save lives. What will you remember? What will you do? Share your answer below. Let's build a community that protects what remains wild in this world.